Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Support Ops Hangout. I'm your host, Chase Clements. With us this week is a fantastic panel, if I do say so myself. First up, we've got two regulars and then a special guest, so we'll get the regulars out of the way since they're so regular and everything. Jeff, first up from Wistia. How's things up in Boston? Are you melting like the rest of us down here in the South?
It is hot. It is very, very hot, Chase. Thank you for asking.
I was going to say, because you pulled off so great. For anybody watching the video YouTube version, Jeff looks like he just got out of a spa. So,
Sweaty mess. My process for getting to the show on time is hop off bike while bike is still moving. It like crashes in the garage. Run inside, throw water on my face, get in front of the camera, look great.
There's the secret right there. Next up, Chase Livingston, who, for everyone that didn't hear the amazing news, we finally met in person, two Chases in the same restaurant, right. And it didn't blow up, which was absolutely amazing. So, Chase, yeah, how was that? What was it like meeting somebody else named Chase?
It was pretty awesome. Yeah, I must say. I thought, the two worlds colliding. I thought something might happen, but we obviously both made it home safely.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I really was worried there for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
It was Nashville too, so I was kind of expecting like dueling banjos to come out and something to go down, but
should have totally done that.
Oh, and then our special guest from this week is fantastic. We've been basically talking in Slack forever, which is a plug for the whole support-driven Slack. If you're not in there, you're going to meet awesome people like this. So Denise is our special guest. Denise, can you kind of introduce yourself and tell us where you work?
Sure. Hi, I'm Denise. I work at Issue. I lead the customer support team, and we're a small bunch of ladies, but we have a lot of fun. And I am in love with the whole group of the support-driven Slack channel, and I'm over the moon to be on the podcast today.
It's gonna be freaking awesome, and it's a great topic. You got us at a great week because this week we're talking about something that everybody goes through. I mean, with any product, you're gonna have customers that either have a bad first impression, that have a bad experience with one of your team members, bad experience with the product itself. I mean, whatever it is. If they're a brand new customer or have been a customer for a while, there's going to be a negative spot somewhere. So we want to talk about ways that we can change that impression. Take that negative impression they have of your team, of your product, and then flip it into a good impression that they're going to, leave feeling happy about, leave wanting to recommend Issue or Wistia or Buffer, WordPress, Basecamp, whatever it is. So let's start. So when I first brought this topic up, I asked everybody on our panel to kind of think about a story they had where one of the customers had a bad experience and they flipped it around. So just kind of open things up, I want to run down the line, and we'll start with Chase Livingston on this one. With Jetpack or with WordPress in general, have you ever had a customer who had a really bad experience that you were able to turn around in the end and leave them, really happy and spreading the word about Automatic?
Yeah, I mean, so unfortunately with Jetpack, we do see issues relatively often just because the crazy number of server setups and things like that that we have to try to deal with. Sometimes things just go wrong and all those variables, and we have to try to help a user get connected. But usually users are really excited when we're able to kind of mediate between them and their host and get things figured out. And so yeah, we honestly see that quite a bit. So there's not just one necessarily case that's happened, but we're able to turn those situations around almost every day, probably.
Yeah, so if I have a problem with my host trying to figure out WordPress, not that I ever have because Media Temple is fantastic and they've always helped out with that, but if I have a problem with my host and I come to you and say, Chase, I've got a problem, I don't know what to do, my host isn't being helped, how would you step in to kind of fix all that? Is your first contact over to whoever's hosting? Like, kind of walk me through that.
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of depends on what the issue is. If it's something that maybe the user is not super technical, and if we can just provide some more technical information to the host, that'll give them what they need to be able to fix the problem. So oftentimes we'll basically just kind of give them the rundown of what's going on, even if it's super technical, and say, hey, just forward this email over to your host. and let them take a look at it, and then they should be able to help you out with that. And if not, if when they reply, just send that back over to us, and we can kind of work with them and get in contact with them directly if we need to. A lot of times too, it's something that we can like search that particular host's documentation or support site, and maybe find the answer ourselves and link the user to that at their specific host, so that way they can go that direction and not even have to get the host involved if need be.
Awesome. So Denise, when it comes to the issue, surely you've run into this, right? Had some kind of customer with a bad experience that y'all fixed. Kind of walk us through what you got.
There's one that comes to mind. It was a user who had 2 different accounts. I think he was a consultant for different companies, and he had ended up opening 2 separate accounts for his client. So he wrote in asking us to cancel one account and then transfer his balance to the other account. So we gave him the information, but for some reason, email, voodoo, whatever, he did not get the response. And so he wrote back upset with us and lambasting the whole support team. One of my team members assisted him again, and he went off on the deep end, very upset, talking about how in this day and age we think we're so cool, we don't have phone support, what is wrong with us, all these new age businesses not putting up phone numbers, and he's a paying customer, he's going to make it his mission to change how we deliver support. And so she was like, okay, Denise, you need to take this one on. So I did. I took it up for the team, and I wrote to him, and I was like, I'm looking at our history, and you sent in this ticket, we responded with this information. Can you tell me which part of it did not make sense so I can figure out how best to proceed with whatever investigation we need to do. And then he wrote back saying, so you, Denise, are good, but your whole team is terrible, and she was terrible, and I have been working in this business for 20-something years. It's my business. You can buy a voice over IP number. Going on and on. Why don't you have phone support? And so finally I said, I really understand where you're coming from. And when I first started, I actually investigated phone support and responded to some users over phone. But here is why it doesn't scale. Here is how and why it doesn't work. We are looking at live chat, and you know what? I think it's a good medium because you get to see how the product works, and we don't have to tell you, press here, click here. But if you can help me understand how phone support would have helped you in this particular case, I'd be happy to keep talking. And then he wrote back, lambasted me again, and then like 30 minutes later wrote back apologizing because someone had sent him a virus that had wiped his whole computer, and he was just pissed off at the world. So basically what I learned was that sometimes you just need to keep going with the customer because it might not actually be you. It might not be you at all. But in this case, I think he was really touched that I wasn't trying to brush off his concerns. I was trying to explain to him that this was an intentional decision. We had thought about it, and we were looking into other options to make the team accessible in cases like this. So.
Yeah, I love it. I love, just explaining why things are the way they are, why the choices, the rationale behind the choices that your team made is really powerful because most people, especially if they're frustrated, like you mentioned, they write in and they're in a bad mood, they're frustrated, and they just don't care. They're not thinking about why I can't have something, yet I can't have it, end of story, throw a rant kind of thing. So that explanation is really key as far as trying to help, balance things back out. Yeah, that's awesome. That's freaking awesome.
He apologized twice. I had to tell him, stop apologizing. It's okay. I'm glad we got it sorted,
Oh, all right. So Jeff, what's your story? Where's one time where not that there has really been many times, but what's one of the few times where a Wistia customer got upset?
Before I jump into the story, Chase, is your shirt blue?
Me? Or Livingston?
No, sorry, Clemens.
Yeah, okay, so mine's blue, but there's this weird green comforter thing behind me, so it kind of throws things. The camera can't figure out colors.
Because I think just as far as support-driven support ops bingo is concerned, you're wearing blue and plaid.
Oh, is that a check?
and all 4 of us are wearing blue.
Yes!
I think we should just take a moment to reflect on that.
Yes!
Second thing before I start my story, also related to bingo, first use of the word lambasting.
That's true.
And then it was used not once, but twice and 3 times in that story. So all kinds of firsts going on in this show.
It's proof that after 87 episodes, we still have
There's
it.
always new. There's always firsts. There's always new things going on.
I
and
am
so happy
blushing, but
that
you can't see it.
So my story is going to lead me, I suppose, just me off a cliff, just me into my point about this whole like saving a bad experience thing, and probably Chase and Denise can talk more about it, which is that we had a customer who was using video, who was using us as sort of a platform, meaning they had hundreds, if not thousands, of videos, and it was powering their entire business, and they were having some playback issues. And they wrote in, it was probably 6:30 on a Friday, and they wrote in saying that they are having major issues with some, specific context, some specific environment of playback. And luckily, Brendan, our CTO and co-founder, was still in the office, and I didn't actually have any part with this, which is the best part of the story. He was made aware of the problem by someone on the support team. He got on the phone with their CEO, and he actually worked it out with them, pulling some data, sort of like live demo style, to figure out what the problem was. We made one settings change to their account, and the whole thing was resolved, which is pretty cool. And to have the co-founder of the business on the phone, I think felt for the customer like we were taking their issue seriously. Mm-hmm. But it kind of brings me to my point, which is thinking about or coming up with the ways, and it's probably specific to each business, that you can move from saving the customer using heroics, right? Using heroes, like having the CEO on the line, having the head of blah on the line, to saving customer experiences sort of systematically, right, at scale. And sometimes it's we need to have a plan for when a customer experiences something like this, and sometimes it's more like the Nordstrom approach, where it's like we have no rules, but just do whatever's your best judgment in the moment, and I trust you, as a Wistian, as a base campion, to do the right thing by our customers. So I think that's kind of like one interesting thing, or I guess like the important thing to talk about is probably a lot of us out there have stories of where heroic efforts saved a customer, right? You went and you got the director of product, you got the VP of engineering in the same room, they sorted out the problem, and they fixed it right there on the spot for the customer, and it totally saved the day. But how do we also go about saving the customer who's not like the $1 million a year contractor, not the VIP, but they're still having a problem that's quite, whatever their experience is, it's really negative. So I guess thinking through that one, I would love to do that on this episode.
See, that's perfect, because, and we were joking around before the show about Jeff giving me time to think about the show and everything else, and it's true, because it breaks down nicely along the heroic versus systematic things. I mean, the stories that we've got so far with Denise and Chase, both of those were pretty systematic things. It's nobody went hugely out of their way to do anything. It's not jumping on a phone call. It's explaining why you don't offer phone support. It's not, flying out to somebody's data center or hosting center to figure out what's going on with their WordPress install. It's just giving them the information they need. Whereas with Jeff, it's heroics. It's the CTO jumps on the phone and literally walks through it. The one for me that comes to mind is not really like, it kind of straddles the line, I guess, between the two, because in my eyes it wasn't really heroic, but it was above and beyond what we would normally do. So we had a Basecamp customer who wrote in, and she was all upset, and it was a capital letters email, basically just bombastic about how the system was letting her down, and she couldn't get what she needed, and the file was supposed to be there because her boss said it was there, and it wasn't there, and the project wasn't where, and basically it was just this huge thing where she was freaking out because it wasn't what she expected. So I jump on the phone with her, and we're talking through a couple of things. And I don't know if it's the magic of phones or whatever, but as soon as somebody hears another voice, they like chill out a little bit. It's like, oh wait, there's another human. I forgot that. So we got on the phone, and it come to find out, it was kind of like Denise's story. She had had a horrible day. Her dog had died late in the previous week. Her boss was breathing down her neck about the specific file that he couldn't find, so he dumped it onto her and made it her responsibility to find this and get it to him. And she was, having all sorts of trouble just finding that one file, and it just kind of erupted at that point. So once we got on the phone, it was, pretty easy. We found the file and got everything squared away, and then a couple of days later, I found a local candy shop in their candy whatever shop, sweet shop, whatever it's called, in their city, and I sent over some chocolate covered strawberries just to kind of brighten up her day. And that was when she sent an email back and just was over the moon happy. It was, I can't believe somebody would think to send me something like this just because I had a bad day and blew up. So it's one of those where people are going to have those kind of negative experiences, and it wasn't Basecamp's fault in that one. It was, she just couldn't find what she needed, and the file was there. If you're familiar with Basecamp, you log in, it's right there. She just the situation going on around her had basically clouded everything that she was doing, so she couldn't get to it as soon as she needed to. So yeah, that was, since everybody else gave the story, that was my story. And I think it all does break down really nicely along systematic, what systems can you build in place to make your customers happy when they have a bad experience, and then heroic things like Jeff was talking about. So yeah, let's kind of dive into that. Chase Livingston, when you're looking at Automatic with as many people as you have, I would imagine that heroics, we're just going to stick with that phrase since I really like it for describing that kind of thing. Is that something that happens a lot, just because you have the extra manpower and can do things like that?
Yeah, I mean, occasionally we are, we're able to do some pretty awesome stuff for our customers as far as, somebody, if we pass something off to a developer, say on Jetpack, working one-on-one with them to, if it's a very, I guess, very specific issue or very unusual issue or whatever, a lot of times, yeah, we'll just, put them in direct contact with one of our Jetpack developers, and, they'll work through, and the developer may even, actually log into their site and just fix whatever needs to be fixed. And so, getting access directly to those developers, I think, is great. And we I wouldn't call it heroics necessarily, but a lot of times on WordPress.com support or something like that, we're able to, I guess an example like we mentioned last week for Greek customers or whatever, just automatically renewing any of their upgrades or something like that proactively. That's something that we've been working on to make sure that we're able to do that, and nobody slips through the cracks and doesn't get renewed or accidentally gets charged or whatever. That's something we've been working on for users that have purchased upgrades with us. So that's something else I guess you could think of as sort of heroics.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to head off a bad experience like that before it actually happens, and try to figure your way out of it then. Denise, with Issue, smaller team like we talked about before, do you find that you have time? Like when you were talking with the gentleman earlier and explaining why you weren't doing phone support and that you'd looked into it and that kind of thing, was there any pressure for you to hurry up and wrap this up because you've got to move on to the next one, or how does that play out on a smaller team?
So because we're so small, our time to first response needs a lot of work, but I don't pressure my team to wrap up the conversation, because in the end you want to resolve that problem so they don't write in again, and even more importantly, you want to resolve it and give them the next step so that they don't have to come back with another question, because you've already helped them figure out what they need to do to get that particular, I call it like a suite of problems resolved. So if they're asking you about this, they're most likely going to ask you about A, B, C, D, and E. So line up B, C, D, and E and add it, and then we give them about 3 days to write back to us. So we keep the ticket open for 5 days while in pending mode. So no, there was no real rush to close it out. I just wanted to make sure that he understood what was happening. The resolution was good enough for him, given our limited resources, and that he could always write back if he needed help. And that's what we do, yeah.
I think that's the thing that scares a lot of smaller teams. It's, I don't have time to sit there and do anything more than, well, sorry, we don't offer phone support, or, well, sorry you had this bad experience, and kind of leave it at that. And it's not just a combination of small teams. It's also, small teams and how many tickets you're getting in on any given time, and how difficult those tickets are. So it's a multitude of things going in on that. But yeah, it's cool to see that there's not a lot of pressure. And I think, like you mentioned, it comes from the team lead. In your case, you telling your team, take time, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm a little overprotective of my team because they are so frontline. When things go south, when a launch doesn't go the way we anticipated, or people are having a lot of misunderstanding about something that was supposed to be an improvement, we are the ones who get hit back with all that blowback. So they know that I'm in their corner, and I will shield them from anything that tries to stress them beyond, because I don't want them to burn out. I don't want them to burn out. They're very good, and I want to keep them here for as long as they want to stay. Yeah.
So, Jeff, Wistia is growing rapidly, and customer base is growing rapidly, team is growing rapidly, that kind of thing. If that same person writes into Wistia this Friday at 6:30, is that going to be the same kind of experience? Is your CTO going to jump on the phone and kind of work things out, or is it gonna be different?
That's a good question. I think it would be the same. The heroics is the same because we still have the same people, right? Like we haven't lost the team hasn't changed or hasn't lost anybody from when all that went down. It's just gotten bigger. The question for me is would it, in order for Brendan to find out about the issue, somebody had to raise it. Right? Like he's not in the inbox, kind of all the time figuring it out. He's only there. He only became involved because somebody was like, I think this is a really big deal. And the thing that you start to lose is what's a really big deal, because the volume is just so high that people start to lose context for what's really, really a big deal. So I'm not sure. I think that there is still plenty of heroics, to use that term, that go on where people do sort of take a phone call or offer to help somebody in a way that we couldn't do for everybody, right? That's kind of what falls into heroics. But we're also thinking a lot about the problem that was, so going back to this specific problem, again, this is very specific to our platform. Had we had some sort of metrics in place to understand, to know when their users are having an exorbitant amount of playback issues, right? So we set some sort of base threshold of 5%, and then somebody's having 50% of their viewers are having problems. That's a really great place for some proactive support, right? Going back to our previous episode. So in that case, it's not so much about let's save this customer from another bad experience in a new way. It's now that we have more people and we're maybe a little bit more experienced in all of this, what are some ways we could prevent that bad experience from ever happening again? That in some cases that might be the way to resolve something that used to require heroics.
Yeah, and so one question, kind of along the same lines there, how do you train your team to differentiate between the two? How do you train your team to where they know when something doesn't need to be flagged and raised to your attention or the CTO's attention or that kind of thing? Is it just trust them and they'll figure it out?
It's mostly just trust them. Yeah, I mean, one thing that we do try to do is give everyone on the team as much context as possible, right? So everybody on the entire support team and all the other, marketing team and ops team and whatever, know what our big product foci are for the rest of the year, right? What engineering is currently working on. And so that means that maybe, people will say, oh, this issue sounds related to a project that we're currently working on. I'll make sure that the team that's working on that is made aware of this bug or something, and maybe they can, make sure that whatever fix they're putting in place for this other thing also addresses this bug, right? So context, I think, helps, but for the most part, it's we tend to believe that talking more about these things is better than talking less, right? Sweeping too much under the rug would be bad, even if it would mean a quieter chat room.
And for your support bingo cards, make sure to mark foci.
Foci. You're not going to hear that one again. Episode 87, where all the weird words came out.
I'm going to pull a few more out for y'all.
Oh, all right. Well, speaking of Denise, so let's kind of talk about first expressions for people still in the trial. So if I just try out issue, and the trial's going all right, I've got some magazines uploaded and all that kind of thing, and then I run into just a showstopper problem, whether it be y'all have downtime or there's a bug that I run into or something like that. How are you going to make sure that that experience I had doesn't deter me from finishing out the trial with y'all and moving on to like a paid plan?
So, funny story, that has happened a couple of times where people, I think we had just started a free trial campaign for people, and the site went down. So that was good. I think one of the things that the team and I have worked on really quickly since I came on board was to make sure that we had basically I call it the fire drill plan. Just I'm terrible at names. So just a system check. Are we getting more than 5 tickets about the same problem in 1 hour? There's a problem. We try to replicate it. We escalate to ops, and then we immediately write a help article to tell people, hey, we know this is going on. We're working on it, and for all those who've written, we will update you. And then we try to update them as soon as possible with any information we get from the engineers. Initially, we're on Zendesk, and we use the problem and incident ticket system, which I love. And so we would group all of them and give them an update. And we recently noticed that on some other support websites, they actually keep updating you maybe by Twitter every 30 minutes or on that post. So we've also started doing that. And especially for the new ones, we try to reassure them, you know what, this is not standard. You just happen to sign up when things are going south. We cannot promise that things will not go south, but we will promise that we will fix it, and we will update you on our progress towards fixing it when it does happen. And most of the people who've received that kind of email have stayed. And if they've left, it's because there was a feature they really wanted that we don't currently provide, but not because our site was down.
See, that's the cool thing with your stories. It's still the same theme. It's all about explaining what's going on so the customer knows exactly what your thinking is and what your team is doing, and just making sure it's clear and transparent. It's people try to make it really, really hard when it comes to situations like that, but it's really easy. Just be as clear and transparent with the customer as you can, and that's all you can do at the end of the day.
Yeah, because, I mean, if it's not fixed right now, and we have a double challenge because part of my team is in Denmark and all the engineering currently is in Denmark. So if there's an outage here and it's Friday, that is not a good day. But thankfully the PMs and some of the on-call ops teams are usually available till like midnight Copenhagen time, so we can get them on there. But letting them understand that, you know what, it's not as if we're ignoring you. We really are working on this, and we'll try to update you. And actually following through and updating them as frequently as we can. On the times where we didn't follow through, that was bad on our part. But when we did update them and say, hey, we've got it to the engineers. They're working on it. They have a fix. They're testing the fix before they push it out live. Most people were very appreciative of that.
Yeah, I'm sure your ops people love those 3 a.m. pager duty alerts, being like,
Lord.
hey, something's broken.
The head of ops is my BFF, so that's what I did.
Oh, so Livingston, same question over to you. I'm trying out, Jetpack in this case. I got it plugged into my site. Things are looking good. I know it's free. I'll preface this with saying that. I know it's free. But if I run into a problem or something with it, what's your kind of, like, how are you going to make sure I don't just drop Jetpack and use some other plugin?
So something that has just recently started happening that I can use sort of as an example for this, we just introduced what we call the Protect module in Jetpack, which is meant to kind of mitigate like brute force login attacks on your WordPress site. So, a bot or a hacker or something is trying to just use as many username password combinations as they can until they may find the right one. And so, unfortunately, this has had the downside of folks who have forgotten their password and don't know how to reset it. If they are trying to log in with the wrong password, 5 or 10 times or something like that, then Protect locks them out of their own site because it sees that as a brute force attack. And so, 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to send us an email and be pretty upset that they've lost access to their site or whatever. But usually when we, send them the information on why that happened, a lot of times it's a new Jetpack user who has no idea sort of what's going on there, but why that happened and how that protects them from hackers, and because WordPress is a big target for attacks and vulnerabilities and that kind of thing. So once we explain that to them, they're usually actually pretty excited about the fact that is free and comes with Jetpack, and they don't have to do anything. And now that they have that information, it's great for them. They just know not to if they've forgotten their password, use the forgot password link and reset it rather than just continuing to try bad passwords and not being able to get in.
Oh, come on! After the 15th time, it's got to be like the 16th time's going to work. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Some people like to try tons and tons of wrong passwords, and with Protect that gets them in trouble.
Yeah, same thing. So Basecamp does kind of something similar, which we just started doing in the last couple of months, where if we see an abnormal amount of login attempts in a short amount of time, we just shut off that IP because, like you said, it's probably okay. So 50-50. It's either somebody forgot their password and won't click the link, or it's actually somebody trying to get into the account. And it's one of those where, again, the explanation is key. When they write in and say, hey, I can't access any Basecamp account at all, we know what's going on. We can explain, oh, yeah, Sue over in marketing decided to try her password 20 times inside of 3 minutes. So first, let's email her and let her know there's a reset link, and second, your site's back up, so you're good to go. Jeff, with Wistia, so I sign up. I'm trying out Wistia as my video hosting for the company and everything else. If something goes wrong for whatever reason, how do you make sure I don't jump the boat and head over to Vimeo or something?
Yeah, great question. I mean, at this point, I think you'd have to let us know that something went wrong. I don't think we have sort of early warning. What's that called? Early warning detection? I can't remember what that's called for like earthquakes and such. But the same type of technology, we don't have that in place. But all this is shifting, to continue the earthquake analogy. All this is shifting under our feet because we are ramping up some awesome customer success efforts, which I have just like no part in, so I can't tell you more about it. But I think that those would be very related, right? We would start to understand, and we are from a product perspective, what drives value, right? Or at least we'd start to take guesses at it by saying, well, these customers did this thing, and then they converted, right? These other customers didn't do this thing, and they didn't convert. So then we can start to make hypotheses about what do you need to do during your trial to make sure that you're having a great time. And the absence of that is kind of the same thing as something going wrong. It's not quite the same, right? As like an upload failed or something like that. Yeah. But most of the time we try to just make the failure state enjoyable in the technical case, in the technical failure case.
Yeah.
Wait, so like buffer enjoyable? So like if my upload fails, you're going to show me like unicorns and flying rainbows or something? Not
quite to the buffer level. We've stayed away from those drugs, but we do. If someone reaches out during their trial and lets us know that they had a poor experience, and we do tag for that now, which is wonderful. Like we know whether you're in a trial or not when you reach out. Well, I was going to say we definitely do try to make to help that, but I'm not even sure that that's true. I think it's just we try to help everybody. Nobody wants somebody to have a bad experience.
Yeah.
I love that. The Wistia team, helping everybody regardless of whatever.
Regardless of whatever.
Yeah.
Seriously, I mean, there's no sales incentive, right? Like, oh, I need to fix it for this person, or else they won't sign up. When you have a monthly, recurring revenue product, that's every conversation is like, man, this one goes bad, they're going to cancel.
Yeah.
So support, you better step your game up, because it doesn't matter whether they're about to buy or they already did. You're on the line either way, really. No big deal. No pressure.
And again, for you support bingo cards, no pressure. That's the song we were looking for this episode. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. It was
Under
under
pressure.
pressure. Under
Under
pressure.
pressure,
So no
yeah.
miss on the card. No
James,
hit.
come on back next week when you can try again.
Oh, and see, I almost had bingo going down the side. Dang, so close. So close. All right, let's wrap it up. Anything that we haven't touched on yet, as far as flipping that negative impression?
So I was talking to Sarah Beth on the support-driven Slack channel because I was trying to get ideas for this podcast, and she mentioned something really interesting, that when someone is angry, they are operating from their hindbrain or reptilian brain, and so they really cannot hear you at all. So her method of operation is to actually make sure they feel heard. Because once they feel heard, they kick into the forebrain and they're like, okay, we're not going to die yet. Let's try to resolve it. And I really like that comment. I mean, I tell my team, before people write in, they're already upset anyway. But I like how she put this in perspective. It's just the reaction. Once you calm down that reaction and they understand that you're going to do your best to assist them, then it's easier for you to go ahead and explain, whatever you're going to do to help.
Yeah, what do you think, gents? Does your tone change like that when you're talking to somebody that's frustrated versus somebody that's like, oh, yeah, I'm good, I just had this question?
I don't know that my tone necessarily changes, but I definitely, if somebody's frustrated...
Your tone never changes, Livingston. Your tone is always the same. Yes, I am currently in an emergency. I'm in an emergency.
Yeah, well.
I mean, sometimes that's what you want, right? Like, customer is freaking out and frustrated. You want somebody that's solid, that's, going to be consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely try to make sure that I'm not overly, but super nice and, that kind of thing with a frustrated user versus a user that's happy. I just try to be myself and, maybe have a little fun with them, but, not necessarily, bait them with sorries and all that kind of thing, apologies and all that if it's not necessary. Yeah. If they're not super upset. So, yeah, there's probably a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, I think for me it comes down to kind of two different areas. First, my tone changes as far as like having fun with the conversation, right? So like if somebody is freaking out in capital letters and everything else, I'm not going to start with "Yay, Happy Monday" or anything like that, So I think that does change a little bit. And the second, I think when you're frustrated, until we can get you in that listening mode, like you mentioned, Denise, it's anything that you put in the email has to be short, concise, and easy to read. So if you're blocked out of your account and I need you to reset your password to get back in, I have to make it as easy as possible. So there's no big chunk of text or anything telling you this is how to do it. It's me saying, hey, I've reset your password. Click this link that you're about to get, and kind of go from there. So I think it changes for me anyway. It's just a little bit. It's kind of no more buffer rainbows and that kind of thing if they're really frustrated.
There was the last talk at UserConf this year was by someone named Mindy from Woo Themes, and it was all about what Denise was just saying, which is there's like rational brain, emotional brain, and then good God, I can't come up with what the last one was. But it's like it's like if you're in a panic, you are in a very specific brain spot, and the thing that as a support person you need to do first is get them to go from that brain spot to more of a rational place, and that there's like a very specific approach to doing that. And her talk was great. I can't recreate it here, but I think that understanding that is the key to moving from heroics to systematic, right? Because if you can come up with the way where in Basecamp, creating a new project fails during a trial, and you message, not only do you message people in the app in a way that kind of takes them from that, oh my God, what happened? This product sucks mentality, but also you have the plan that when they follow up, when they email in and they're like, by creating a new project didn't work, like what is the deal? Okay, this person is in, God, what was it? Emotional brain? Manic brain? I can't remember the term, but this person is in that state right now. Something went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
What is the way that we get them to the rational side, which is this isn't something that's happening for everybody or whatever. This is a temporary thing. Basecamp actually is still working, right? Still a product that works. It will be fixed in the next X amount of time or whatever. Here's what, in the meantime, you can watch an episode of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and we'll be right back with you. Something like that, like how you kind of walk them from I'm in a moment of panic to everything is okay. And the product should do that. The documentation should support that. Your support, folks should be trained in how you kind of like do that emotional jujitsu. I think it's all related.
Yeah, that's one of those where, so not necessarily creating new project, but I know one of the things with Basecamp, when you're part of a Basecamp account, but you're not part of a project yet, it can kind of be frustrating when you log in and you're like, yay, I see blank space. Did something go wrong? What's going on? My boss told me I'm supposed to be in this project, and I'm not in this project, like freak-out mode. So if you are in that state in Basecamp, where you're part of the account, you're not part of the project, a YouTube video pops up with, what's the cat in the box called? Maru or something like that? I forget. It's the cat in the little Japanese box, and he like smushes himself in. It's the cutest thing in the world. And it helps, first it's fun, not buffer fun, but fun. And second, I have gotten emails where people are like, I was really frustrated, and I watched this video, and now I'm not quite as frustrated, but seriously, tell me what's going on. Like, why can't I see a project? So yeah, you can have a little bit of fun, kind of going back to that proactive theme that we talked about last week, and then parts of this week. You can have that proactive support actually help diffuse a bad experience before it ever happens, or maybe not clear it out completely, but at least put them in a better mood, a better kind of environment to interact with you in. So yeah, definitely. See, Denise, it's worth having you on the show this week just for that alone. Although, seriously, Jeff, whatever that word is, I mean, that's not on my bingo card, so I'm not worried about it. All right, so that's what we thought on this subject. We're going to have all of our show notes and everything else up shortly, supportops.co. Make sure to let us know how your team handles those kind of flipping those negative impressions, those bad impressions that a customer might have. New trial user, current user, doesn't matter because like Jeff pointed out, everybody is going to renew at the end of the month, so you've got to keep them just like they're a new user. So that brings us to my favorite part of each and every week with this crew.
Woohoo!
The sound effects thing has disappeared again, so we're back. We're back to...
I get the drum!
It's this week's shoutouts. These are the things that are making us happy. So happy we want to shout them out from the rooftop to let you know you should be using this thing.
Seriously, what the shit, Google, whatever, that you just removed that app on us. Sorry, go on.
I had a perfect G rating in iTunes. That's all right. We'll slide it in under the radar. All right, let's start. Let's just go down the line. Chase Livingston, what do you got this week?
So I'll just give a shout out to Nashville. I was there last week. We sponsored. We sponsored a booth at the National Association of Music Merchants Conference and talked to a lot of awesome musicians, of course, in Nashville, and ate some great food. I got to hang out with the other Chase, so it was a great week, and I really enjoyed the city. I'd never been before, so definitely planning on making it back there at some point.
Awesome. And seriously, if you haven't if you haven't met me, you should meet me. If you haven't met the city of Nashville, it is really fantastic. One of the great airports to fly into. So if you're not driving in like Livingston did, it's great to fly into. Small, and the city is small enough where you can have a good time without like being crushed by hordes of people. Yeah, and if you do come to Nashville, let me know because I'm literally right down the road, so we can hang out. Denise, what's your shout out for this week?
My shout out is the Overdrive app. Sometime in October last year, I realized I wasn't reading enough, and I love to knit. Like I was telling you guys, I have a lot of yarn. So, oh, oopsie. So I decided that it would be a good use of my time to listen to books while driving. So I looked up the Overdrive app, which works with your local library. So if you want to get an ebook or audiobook or any kind of book, you can use your library card and sign into that. And if your library has an account with them, you can listen to a lot of books for free. So
Who doesn't love that? I love free.
yeah,
I can't
right?
complain. Jeff, what's your shout out for this week?
So I have two. My first one is for a apparel, accessories, a menswear company called General Knot. That's General Knot. I was trying to find a tie to wear for my wedding, and their support was incredibly helpful and totally went above and beyond. And they followed through even after purchase to make sure that I was still excited about the tie. And they want to add pictures of us, including me, in the tie to their, their little wedding gallery that they have on their site. So the kind of support experience that you dream of, that is my first one for General Knot.
Wait, I really do need to know, do you still like the tie?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten it yet, but I love the concept. It's on its way. Yes, I do. It's beautiful. My second shout out is for the First Round Review, which I feel like I might have shouted out before. But First Round Capital has this just amazing content engine. I don't even know how they do it or what they get out of it, but it seems like at least twice a week I'm getting articles from them that are from really smart people at really cool companies taking on the type of problems that you're like, yeah, I actually do have that problem, right? Like, how do the people from Airbnb deal with trust and loyalty, and how do the people from Spotify deal with team dynamics and prioritization and that kind of thing? It's like every week it's really high quality companies tackling the kinds of problems that aren't just the ones that are in every Hacker News article out there. So if you don't subscribe to it, I really do highly recommend it, and I don't subscribe to very many things.
Awesome. And I will throw in, too, that Jeff does pass on all that wisdom he gains in his weekly newsletter thing. So if you're not signed up for that one, you should probably sign. That's 2 great newsletters right there in your inbox every week. So read it. Cool. My shout out this week, I think, Jeff and I might have talked about it last week. Shortly after the show, something like that. But we were giving Chase Livingston grief last week because we figured he would pick Apple Music, and he didn't, and we were all disappointed. But I did want to shout out Samuel Hulick's onboarding breakdown of Apple Music, and it was really interesting because he went through and his experience was completely different than mine, which was always really eye-opening because, you think you go through an app and it's like, oh, it's going to be the same for everybody. My experience figuring it out and starting to use Apple Music was completely different. So if I had done it by myself, I would have told the team behind it, yeah, you got it. This is great. Congrats. You figured it out. That's why you need multiple people looking at your onboarding, just a hint. But yeah, he goes through and breaks down the onboarding for Apple Music, and it was really a frustrating first run for him. And there was multiple places where Apple could have done better. And, that breakdown was really great. Every breakdown that he's done so far has been really great. He's got a book on the site that's really great. So my shout out specifically for the Apple Music onboarding because I learned a lot too, not to trust my own first impressions, that kind of thing, when it comes to onboarding. But a general shout out to him and everything he's doing over at with the onboarding over there because he's really, really nailing it. And there's a lot of great info in there for how to set up a really great first customer experience. So check it out. We'll have that and all the other links in the show notes. Those will be up, supportops.co. Make sure to let us know what how your team handles those bad impressions like we talked about. supportops.co/contact, or hit us up on Twitter. It's @supportops there. Denise, thanks for being a guest. You did fantastic. You didn't fall out, which is just kind of bare basic minimum for this show.
Woo-hoo.
Everything else was great.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel, and until we see you then, have an awesome week.
Bye.
Unless we melt.